Welcome to What's the Story with me, Martin Daubney. COP26 was meant to be a galvanising moment in human history when world leaders came together and united their subjects behind them to join arms in their holy war against the so-called climate emergency. Instead, for millions of hard-working, ordinary citizens, it's done the precise opposite. It's united us against the most pampered, do as I say, not as I do, out-of-touch political elites since the days of the French Revolution. As the grim reality emerged that the quest to achieve net zero would cost every household in Britain thousands of pounds at a time when we can least afford it, it was an endless conveyor belt of one rule for them and another for us drivel. From the four corners of the planet, presidents, princes, billionaires, lovies and Hollywood hypocrites jetted in on over 1,000 private planes, spewing out more carbon emissions than Scotland produces in an entire year. There they wagged their fingers at us, painting a grim picture of scrapping our boilers, cars and foreign holidays, supported by a simpering media. But whereas Marie Antoinette said of her revolting peasants, "Let them eat cake," the COP26 brigade actually said, "Let them eat insects," as a more sustainable source of protein versus polluting red meat. Of course, for those who you think would be most supportive of this, it simply wasn't enough. Graceless Greta Thunberg told them to shove it up their arses, and thus a miracle of sorts was achieved. For once, the working classes agreed with the patron saint of climate change. In a moment, we'll be talking to Ben Pyle, who's been charting the madness of the COP26 crowd in his excellent daily podcast, #FLOP26, which you can catch on the Climate Resistance YouTube channel. Now, remember, the government's Behavioural Insights team, that's the nudge unit to you or me, said that signs of hypocrisy are the worst thing for maintaining compliance for restrictions amongst the public. With that in mind, we've compiled a top 10 of the abject hypocrisy of the first week of COP26. Let's play the video. Hello pop pickers and welcome to the COP26 Top of the Flops, the chart that ranks the rank hypocrisy of climate change zealots. In at 10 it's Bill Gates, who pledged £400 million to tackle low carbon aviation, except in February he paid £3 billion for a private jet airline. Hot on his heels at 9, the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos. Bozo called the Earth fragile and finite. His space program must really help. It's enough to drive you to drink, which is precisely what the Jolly Boys from Zimbabwe did. Their president flew in over 100 cronies who got off their trolleys, stocking up on Scotch, Stella and Iron Brew. In at number 8 is COP's headline media sponsor Sky News, whose chief executive Dana Strong has been regularly commuting by private jet from her home 3,500 miles away in the States. Incidentally, Sky News also told us this week that we should eat insects, but of course they don't serve any bugs in the Sky canteen. In at 7 is Joanna Lumley, who told us wartime rationing could tackle climate change with special vouchers for foreign holidays. Yeah, that's the same Joanna Lumley who's made TV travel shows in Asia, the Caribbean, Africa, Japan and Greece. In at 6, the Archbishop of Wokery, Justin Welby, warned that ignoring climate change was worse than ignoring the Nazis in the 1930s. Yeah, that's the same Welby who was employed as a finance shark for corrupt oil firm Elf in the 1980s. At number 5, President Biden rocked up to COP in a 21-car motorcade. Impressive, but a tidy 64 less vehicles than he'd taken to the G20 summit in Rome just days before. At 4, clown Prince Charles told us to get on a warlike footing against climate change, warning of great sacrifices ahead, before retreating back to one of his 7 country piles. At number 3, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen told us we should put a price on carbon as nature cannot pay. Before it emerged, she'd taken 18 private jets since being elected, including a 31-mile trip. At number 2, Nicola Sturgeon did her bit, posing for selfies with David Attenborough, Greta Thunberg and the Prime Minister of Belgium. Before COP26, Sturgeon had said that she wouldn't shake anyone's hand ever again, especially not a man's. But look, she promptly ignored her own device when Joe Biden shuffled over. But at number 1, the top of the COP flops, is the true horror show of the cost of net zero. Former Bank of England chief Mark Carney told us net zero targets would cost over $100 trillion, with the British government's own leaked figures showing this means £1,700 for every family, every year until 2050. Now listen, we don't begrudge these people their wealth. We don't begrudge them their power. But it sticks in the craw when the minted hypocrites of COP26 tell us what to do, while doing the precise opposite. That's all for this week, Pop Pickers. More next time. And now we are going to our guest, Ben Pyle. So Ben, it's doomsday. It's apocalypse. It's 1 minute to midnight. Do this lot actually believe that?
Well, who can say apart from them? I haven't got a mind probe. I certainly think that they don't seem to believe what they say, but I think we need to go beyond the hypocrisy. And what they seem to be suggesting is that we do as they say, not do as they do. And we're certainly not going to be able to do what they do, because they hang around in private jets and some of them even space rockets, as your brilliant clips just showed there.
Okay, so in terms of the worst offenders, I mean, you've been listening to this every day. You deserve a medal for that, by the way. Who have been the standout hypocrites this week?
I think that the conversation between Jeff Bezos and Prince Charles just probably rankled me the most in terms of hypocrisy. There was a man just landed from space that sat, on his rocket that just poured out more carbon emissions from fossil fuels than anyone can even contemplate emitting in their entire lifetimes, right? And that's a man who, over the last 18 months, thanks to the management of the global pandemic, has increased his fortune by some £85 billion $85 billion or so. Right, that's just numbers that nobody can contemplate during a year in which most people's lives were turned upside down. And his sort of indulgence, as it were, as Christian indulgence, was to pay just 10 billion to green NGOs to help advance this propaganda, so that nobody was pointing at him to say what a hypocrite pushing out all of this. He's essentially bribed or bought off the entire global green movement with a bunch of cash, and then into the bargain used COP26 to perhaps secure more of his own interests in a sort of land grab deal, where he would be paying for some conservation. But that's like me giving 50p at someone. It's of absolutely no consequence to him. Certainly not going to hurt.
Yeah, and the figures are eye-watering, aren't they? When you look at 2 billion donation, as we said now, VT there, here's a guy who didn't pay a single penny in revenue on 44 billion euros of revenue in Europe. So, and I also feel that here's a guy buying political immunity from an IRS probe. This is Bono syndrome on steroids. This guy makes Bono look humble.
Right, and they're not people known for their humility, but certainly what needs to be injected into this process is that there's a real sense to me that they've reached some kind of critical mass of hypocrisy. Not just hypocrisy, because again, I want to get beyond the hypocrisy, but that there's nothing containing this process. It's just like it's a bunch of people getting madder and madder and madder, because none of them, like billionaires famously, never hear the word no. And if you never hear the word no, you never know when to stop. sort of a one-way ticket to ever more insanity. They wind each other up. They push the targets. They push the envelope, and they increase the ambition. They call it, and they seek more and more and more from us.
Well, Ben, two people who have said no, and there's been a lot of talk about this week, is certain Mr. Putin and a certain President Xi. Surely having a climate summit without the world's two biggest polluters is simply pointless.
Well, I don't really know what motivates Russia and China. I mean, their non-participation in the COP26 process might not be what it seems. Certainly, they've got very large populations. Well, China's got a very large population. Russia's got a very large land area to manage. The geopolitics of 2021 isn't the same as it was a decade ago or the decade before that. So it does look like that. Perhaps they're doing something sensible in not being there. Perhaps they can see that the madness is escalating, and it's certainly not in the interests of those governments to align themselves to what is categorically a sort of European and American agenda, and they've got to look after the interests of their populations too.
Yeah, certainly there could be no bigger V sign to COP26 this week, but we saw China fire up zombie power stations. They're burning so much coal, the new power stations alone can't cope. They're firing up the older, more polluting ones at a time when old King coal has been all but made illegal in the West. They're laughing at us, aren't they, Ben?
Perhaps. I mean, it is a pretty ridiculous spectacle. We in the West like to, or some people like to, sort of point and mock those tyrants, Putin and Xi. But the president of the European Union, or certainly the EC, Ursula von der Leyen, she stood in an election unopposed and only managed to win by 2 votes. That's quite a remarkable indictment of European democracy. And there are questions about US democracy as well. They're sort of the congealing of all these Western governments and in the COP26 process probably smacks as much to hypocrisy as those governments as it does to us.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ben. I was at that election when von der Leyen was voted in on a ticket of one in the same week when somebody else was voted in on a ticket of one in the world, and that was Kim Jong-un. Yeah, that's the level of democracy we're talking about in the European Union. Now, Ben, I want to ask you about, is there any political opposition anywhere to this within the COP26 church, or is it just a room full of believers?
There is opposition. Well, there's us, Martin, and I think that there are probably most of the 66 million population of the UK, and it's us that needs to sort of explain that to Boris Johnson. I mean, Boris Johnson said this week, using standard green claims that there's going to be more storms, for example, to say that British people shouldn't be allowed a referendum on the net zero agenda. We've not been asked at any point for our opinion on the green agenda in any respect. All of the legacy Westminster parties have decided for themselves years ago that we're going to have to lump it, and I would suggest that we people watching this who sort of feel differently about what's going on at COP26 and who think it's not going ahead in our interest should sign the petition that's on the House of the Parliament website to ask Boris Johnson to allow a referendum on this, because the longer it goes on and the longer democracy is excluded from this process, the more that this anti-democratic agenda will impact our lives, right? It's and that could be quite unfortunate when the policy, the nature of the policy is revealed. It looks like saving the planet. It looks like making the world greener, but actually it's taking power away from people. So we can have the arguments about what's the best way to power an economy, and we can have the arguments about what's the best form of energy, but that's got to happen in a democratic process. Otherwise, we're going to have power, unaccountable power, or power that's decisions that are made in global bureaucracies, not made between governments and people who are governed.
I think you're absolutely bang on there. I would urge everybody watching Reclaim the Media today to sign that petition. We'll put a link below here. It's also on the Reclaim Party Twitter feed, and it's on my personal Twitter feed. I've signed it, Ben. You gave me a nudge. You and my little nudge unit on that. But you're absolutely right. Nobody voted for any of this. It was hidden on about page 24 of the Conservative Manifesto. I spent many months going around the UK, across the East Midlands, the West Midlands, the red wall seats as they became deciding in those elections, asking thousands of people what was important to them. Literally nobody talked about Build Back Better bollocks. Literally nobody said that this was key to their list. They were bothered about Brexit, affording petrol, affording their heating, being able to eat, being able to go on holiday. And Ben, is this not just a preserve of the privileged? Saving the planet is a laudable upper middle class pursuit, and it completely excludes the working classes who are expected to bankroll it.
Absolutely. And I do think they fool themselves. And the way you can tell that they're fooling themselves is that they can't defend their beliefs. They can't defend their position. When you put to people that actually this notion that we're all going to hell in a handcart, that Boris Johnson's doom machine. When you put the facts to people, when you show them the economic and industrial progress has unleashed immense benefits to humans, and that people aren't dying from climate change, that actually people are getting healthier, wealthier, they're living longer lives, they're living better lives, they're more rewarding lives across the world. Then they have no real comeback. In fact, it makes them angry to hear that the world is getting a better place. And I think it makes them angry because then their world starts to crumble. The world in which they are the good people and everyone else are their lessers who must do as they're told. It upsets them more than hearing good news. That's a remarkable turn of events, I think.
I absolutely agree. I think politically and in terms of our media landscape, we are addicted to catastrophe. Brexit was going to end the world. COVID was going to end the world. Before that, nuclear war, acid rain, the ozone layer, Ebola, you name it. None of that's happened. And the world won't end either because of this. But what I want to turn to now, Ben, is the most important thing to thousands of people that have been in touch with us at the Reclaim Party, and that is the sheer cost of this. Now, I know that you helped compile the video that Lawrence did last week about the true cost of net zero. The government's own figures this week, they said £1,700 for every British household. I think that's grossly undervalued. What do you think the true cost of this will be? Talking about insulating homes, buying new boilers, buying new cars and so on and so forth, Ben.
Well, that's an extremely complicated estimate to sort of produce. It's not helped by the fact that the government don't know, and you can see that they don't know. They've never the body that's responsible for sort of producing estimates and producing sort of budgets is the Climate Change Committee, and they famously have refused to explain how they're doing their calculations. Right, so they ultimately had to be taken to court to be forced to explain to the public what the bill's going to be, right? And then you have no agreement about what the costs are between the Treasury and the Business Secretary, for example. So the Business Secretary says, oh, it's going to be nothing. It's not going to cost anyone anything. There's going to be no need for green taxes. And the Treasury says, well, actually, no, it's going to cost quite a bit. So they're not actually even reading from the same script, and they can't produce any evidence of their own. What people have done, organisations like the GWPF who are trying to and Net Zero Watch now, what they're trying to do is look at what evidence there is of what evidence has been supplied, and there are a number of organisations that are actually on the green side that have produced estimates as well. So it looks like it's going to cost about £3 trillion to the UK economy, and that's probably going to be taken from consumers, from households. So that's you're looking at sort of I think between £40,000 and £100,000 per household. But that's I mean, even if you could sort of imagine that as something that's manageable, what if we have another crisis that's totally mismanaged, such as COVID? What if there's another deep global recession? What if there's any number of things that could happen that we've seen do happen throughout history? Then that bill, you can effectively double, triple it. It's such an extraordinary price for something that yields no benefit whatsoever to most consumers, unless they've of course got shares in green tech companies, perhaps. But that could end up being everything, right? So if you were faced with a demand like that tomorrow, then that could mean you losing your home. That could mean that you're unable to work. That could mean that all of the things that you depend on are taken away from you, and therefore you just become completely dependent on benefits or your friends or neighbors, we could face a situation where all of the services that the state provides are no longer available to us. We're talking about transforming ourselves quite almost deliberately from a first world nation to a nation with a huge question mark over its economy.
Ben Pyle, astonishing. That's a lot of food for thought. And I can't disagree with you. A long time ago, I stopped saying that the conspiracy theorists are right, because I don't think conspiracy theorists are conspiracy theorists. They're just the only sensible adults in the room. When you're looking at 3 trillion, which could be trebled, 50 grand per household, which could change radically. People like me have already had to stop using their cars because Sadiq Khan's taxed them off the road in the UK. I can't afford a new boiler. I can barely afford to go on holiday. Thousands of ordinary Britons are the same. We've got all this lot up in COP26 telling us that we must sacrifice our quality of life for their religion. I think it stinks. I think we need a huge political backlash against this. And Ben, I know that you're fighting on. Tell us more about stuff you do and how people can get involved.
Well, I've been writing about this for quite a few years. At the moment, my project is the daily live stream. I saw that there was this ridiculous conference going on in Glasgow, and I saw that there was no opposition. There was no discussion going on between competing ideas about how to understand the problem of climate change, and if it is a problem, how to deal with it. So I thought that what I'd do is I'd put together a daily show in which people with an alternative perspective could offer that to people who watch, and that's called the COP26 live stream, which you can find using that hashtag.
Well, Ben, you're a one-man army of common sense, and God knows we need it at the moment because we have a media orthodoxy of believers, and anybody who disagrees are heretics. That needs to change. I sincerely hope that this results crystallises in political revolution against the Conservative Party and the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, because basically we voted Boris, we got Greta. None of us voted for this. None of us want this. We can barely afford this. It's going to destroy the working classes. I believe it's a new class war, and we are leading the resistance here at the Reclaim Party. Ben Pyle, it's been an absolute pleasure, never a chore, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.